Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show, Jack of All Trades. I'm your host, Jack Allen, and I think you're in for a terrific show today. We will be celebrating the 100th year anniversary of Coverdale. Welcome to our show on Coverdale. I'm your host, Jack Allen, and today I have with me Bob McCormick. Bob has taken the task of celebrating and checking out artifacts and facts themselves for 100 years anniversary of Coverdale in Bethel Park.
The Coverdale exhibit was an idea that we came up with last year. What happened is we noticed that we were coming up on top of the 100-year anniversary, and we said we can't let this go unnoticed. So what we did last year was start putting. I've been collecting different articles and different stories and things for 30 years now at Coverdale, and they were all sitting in my basement. And I thought to myself, what a waste! This needs to be in the public. So I talked to Pastor Wallace here at Bethel Baptist Church, and he said, feel free and to take a space up front of the church and build something. So it kind of got bigger and bigger. We put notices out throughout the neighborhood, and people start coming down here and telling us stories, telling us, giving us artifacts, and it really just grew. So then we were lucky enough to have this put in the almanac, and Mr. Harry Funk wrote a real nice piece. And the day of, we had nearly 100 people here, and all from Coverdale, and it was amazing how much they came in here and wanted to tell their story. So we had some of the kids of the neighborhood sitting around in the church here taking notes, and they would all record all the stories of what was happening. And from there, it just really grew. Now, in August, we were supposed to have the 100th anniversary, but it didn't work out because of COVID and different things. So what we're trying to do now is do a 101 anniversary. That'll be next year. So.
Okay, great. If you could, now I know that we had talked before, and each one of these artifacts, you have a story in the book about them. So if you can just give us a couple samples of the type of artifacts we're looking at and the story that goes behind them.
Yeah, one of my favorite pieces is this stove over in the corner here. We have that stove is from Mr. Steve Orsini. That heated a house here on Cherry Street for many years. Then it heated a house on Hemlock Street. After that, it heated his garage for many years. Well, in his older years, he went and decided, to clean out the place, and he was looking for a scrap man to take it. And I said, "Oh, Mr. Orsini, no way!" I said, "You can't. That's a piece of history. We have to keep that." So we drug it out of his garage and brought it down and cleaned it up a little bit and put it here. And there's articles here are from every piece, and I want to make the note that this is not all in the mining days. And I think one of the issues that I had was it seems like the history, everybody stopped recording history in Coverdale after 1948, after the mine closed. And I feel that there was so much more, and there's so many important stories. People built up this neighborhood to be wonderful over the last 50 years, and I think that needs to be documented too. So I wanted to incorporate a lot of things and a lot of stories and items from 1948 on.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Now I noticed that up on the wall, you have a picture, and I'm going to assume that's one family that is from Coverdale.
Yes, this is Miss Phyllis Griffin. They lived on Elm Street, and Miss Phyllis, we were trying to combine her story with Black History Month because she was the first African American high school graduate in Bethel Park High School. So we try to put things together, and what we're doing here is we're trying to, every 3 months, we're trying to represent a new resident in Coverdale. She was the first, but again, COVID, came along and kind of messed things up. So as of next year, we're going to, do one every 3 months.
Okay. And you did mention that you do have stories about every artifact, but you also have some humorous ones.
Oh, yeah.
Like I noticed that there's a baked bean pot in here.
Yeah, that was the baked bean pot was a lady named Donna Arthur, and it was said that in a joking way, it was said that she made the best baked beans in town, and every party or picnic she was invited to. And so it got to be the joke around town that the only reason she was invited because of her baked beans, and she actually got a kick out of that.
That may
too.
be true.
Yeah, maybe. And down here is Aunt Annabelle's beaten stick. I tried to make stories not so serious. I looked at some of the different things and over time in historical societies, and everything seems to be kind of serious. I wanted to make it put a little bit of character and show the character of the people in Coverdale. So Aunt Annabelle's beaten stick, every night around 11 o'clock she would come out and she would yell for her cat, but she would bring her beaten stick to the door. And then she would say, if anybody is ever going to mess with me or my cat, they're getting Aunt Annabelle's beaten stick. So luckily I was able to keep that, and I put it in the exhibit also.
And hopefully she never had to use it.
She didn't use it, but she definitely threatened.
She didn't have to use it. And so what would you think would be one of the most unique items that you have in this collection?
Probably right here. Probably this wagon. We found this wagon in a house that was being torn down. And this wagon we did a little research on it. It was found in a house that was being torn down. But not only that, it was found in the corner of a basement, and it was under probably 50 pounds of old carpet. And this house was, really dilapidated and, leaking everywhere. And I guess those carpets over time kind of preserved it, And so we were throwing stuff out of there, rooting around before the house was torn down. And then we pulled it out of there. We shined it up a little bit, and there it is today.
Okay.
Yeah.
We certainly have a nice collection of artifacts here. And you did mention that even though we're in a COVID situation, you are open on regular hours now, or you will be?
Yeah, we will be. We're kind of waiting to see things settle down a little bit, but we're hoping to be open from 12 to 5 every Saturday, where people can come down, enjoy the exhibit, and give a story, or donate an item, and anything they want to do. Just come down and talk, have fun, do it the Coverdale way here. Yeah.
All right, since you're celebrating your 100th year, just give us a little history on this area, how it started.
Yeah, we went back and into the and dug up a lot of information from a lot of different people, and we found it in 1915. The Montour Railroad started buying up land around here. And this particular area right here was owned by a farm owner named Jay Woods. He had 24 acres, and that's where Coverdale and the Tipple and partially of Industrial Boulevard sits now.
Okay. Now I noticed that also it's named after.
Yes, W.H. Coverdale was the chairman of the Pittsburgh Terminal Railroad, and this town was actually named after him because he knew that this town was being built as one of a kind, and it was supposed to be one of the better built coal mining towns with a better built tipple and more safety precautions than any other. So he wanted his name on that because it was going to be one of the best.
Okay, because people often wonder, where did it get the name? No matter where, like Peters Township or wherever it is.
Yeah.
So Coverdale's actually named after a person. Yeah. Okay, well, I appreciate a little view of what you have here to offer.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll open up soon in the county and in the country.
Yeah.
And our neighbors from Coverdale and even from anywhere in Bethel Park can come down here and look at the history.
Yeah.
All right, I'm with Rio Virgili. Reno used to be the mayor of Bethel Park. Reno also grew up in Coverdale in the 30s. So we're going to ask him to explain how it was growing up here, whatever the stories he may have, anything that he'd want to let us know about this area. So welcome to the show, Reno.
Thank you, Mayor.
And just give us a little background on yourself down here and some of the things you remember.
All right. To begin with, I was brought here when I was 3 months old back in 1930. My father had already had the job here in the mines, and my mother was still living at home with her parents. So at 3 months old, I was brought here to Coverdale and lived on Spruce Street, which is on the upper part of Coverdale. And growing up here during the 30s, was a lot different than it is today, believe me. I'll give you a little bit of history about the mine maybe he didn't cover. This mine opened in 1920, and it operated until 1947. Now, they had a company store here, which was actually owned by Mutual Supply Company. And Mutual Supply Company was a part of the mine, but they were not legally a part because there was a law that the mines weren't allowed to operate a store on premise. So they formed a separate corporation, which is called Mutual Supply. And everything that the miners bought that they needed for day to day, they bought through the Mutual Supply Company store. And the store had their own money. They called it script. Instead of getting paid in cash, you got script money. So it was a known fact that a lot of people used to sell their script money on the street to get cash so that they go to maybe a local bar or someplace that they wanted to go to spend and needed cash. They would sell the script to their neighbor or somebody else, but that's how they got paid. The miners themselves worked hard. It was a tough job. They worked in these mines. There was no set hours. There was no kind of a union back in those days. They worked from morning till night. And I know this because my father worked in this mine, later became a boss here. He worked here from 1930 to 1941, just before the war broke out in 41, World War II that is. And he was transferred, he had a governmental job. They transferred him to another job in another mine that was owned by the government. Growing up in Coverdale, we had nothing, and no one in this town had anything. These houses were nothing more than 4 rooms, 2 downstairs, 2 upstairs. There was no central heat. There was no air conditioning to be heard of, nothing. Most of the house did not have running water. There were a few that had running water, but most of them didn't have running water. No running water, no indoor toilet facilities, all outhouses.
In the heyday, did you have any idea how many people or the population was here in Coverdale?
Well, there were 300 homes
Okay.
in Coverdale, 300 homes.
And just give us like one more other story that you remember the most.
Well, you know how they're starting to do it today, delivering your groceries, but you have to pay for it. Well, back in those days, there was bread was delivered, and his name was Charlie Comby, a local resident here in Bethel. He passed away a few years ago. But Charlie was the baker. Everybody knew Charlie the baker. And he would come around every morning, see if you wanted a loaf of bread, 2 loaves of bread, 3, whatever you wanted. Milk was the same way. Hartman Dairy delivered the milk. Every morning, the milk would be on your porch. You left a little note in the empty bottle, because you returned the bottles. You leave a little note there, you wanted 1 bottle, 2 bottles, and he'd leave it and he'd bill you. And the same thing went with vegetables. There was a huckster came around every couple of days, and he just sold, vegetables off of the truck. And the ladies would get out there and buy the vegetables. And same thing happened to clothing. If they wanted clothes, a peddler would come around, and the ladies would go out and try the clothes on right there on the street, try the clothes on and buy them. So everything was delivered in that way. Now we had the company had a doctor, and the doctor took care of everybody in this town. I think they paid 50 cents a month for the doctor. It was like a hospital.
Health insurance.
Yes. And if you went to the doctor, you bought no pills. You didn't go to a drugstore. There were none. You went to no drugstores. The doctor would give you all the pills. He'd mix them up there, right there. If you had a cold, he'd mix something up and give it to you. And sure enough, it worked. And another thing they would do, they had old-fashioned remedies. And one of them was if you had a chest cold, they would get 2 pieces of flannel material, and they'd put nothing more than tar. It's called pine tar. They'd spread it on one layer, and then they'd put the other layer on top and put it on your chest. Sure enough, the next morning you had no cold.
You also had no hair on your chest. So, that's...
In the wintertime, the roads here were so bad that there was nothing but mud. If it snowed, The ruts would get about a foot deep. And in the wintertime, that'd freeze over and there'd be nothing but big ruts. And there was no snow plowing, there was none of that. And the doctor would come to make house calls in the wintertime with a sleigh with a horse behind it.
So now, did the doctor actually live in this town also?
Yes, he did. He lived right
Okay.
up on Main Street.
Okay, so it sounds like, it's if you're living here, you don't have to leave. You got a general store for most of your needs, and milk and bread and what have you. They would deliver, so the people really didn't have to leave here.
That's exactly right.
So
And any place you went, you either walked or you didn't go. There was no transportation until the late 30s, whenever the railway came in, I think 30, 34, 35. And I have pictures of that here also.
okay. All right. Well, we're going to be talking to some other people about some of their experiences here also. And I know that knowing you over the years, that we can talk about this for hours.
Hours and hours.
Exactly. But I want to thank you for being here today. It's very interesting. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot from Bob, so it's a very interesting section of Bethel Park. So again, thank you for coming and being part of the show. All right, I'm here with Diane Ford. We talked a little bit about our the mining days at Coverdale, and then we talked a little bit about stories afterwards. Diane is actually a fourth generation from this area, so welcome to the program.
Thank you.
And I've known Diane for years, so I know she has some good stories. So just tell us a little bit about your growing up here, why we're sitting exactly where we are. So.
Okay, so I grew up here in Coverdale. Like Jack said, I'm a fourth generation, and there are two other generations after me. So there's a total of 6 generations of my family, which is the Richardson family offspring that live here in Coverdale. I am actually sitting in the exact seat that my grandfather, Samuel Richardson, used to sit in when we had church. And my grandmother would sit right behind him in this seat here. And this church was built by a bunch of community men, and one of them was my great-grandfather, Frank Richardson Sr. And so I have a whole lot of memories here, a whole lot of fun times living in Coverdale. It's probably, in my opinion, the best place to live. Not that we are perfect in any way, shape, or form. However, we love each other truly and deeply, and anytime anybody needs anything, we're right here for each other. So this is a very, very rich, wealthy place to live, and more than just what we have monetarily. That's not a lot, but what we have in love is more important than anything, in my opinion.
Right. I'm here today with Mrs. Richardson. She's been a resident in Coverdale for 70 years. I want to thank you for being part of our tribute, our 100th year of Coverdale. And what we wanted to find out from you is a couple of the memorial things that you remember from living here for that long.
Well, I had 7 kids while I was here, and 7 of them graduated from Bethel High School, and 7 of them went to college. And then I have 10 grandkids, which you can see there. And I love pictures, as you can see. They wish I would take some of them down, but I won't because I'm the mother.
No, I wouldn't take them down either. So you moved here, or you said you've been here for 70 years now.
Yeah.
What's some of the stories that you can tell the people that are watching this show that want to find out a little bit more about the Coverdale area?
I wouldn't want to live any place else. I've traveled, cruises. I can't wait to get back on that swing.
Okay.
And it's been nice.
So you said you moved here in 1950.
Yeah.
Which was 2 years after the mine closed.
The mine was closed when I came.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what was this area like without the mine? Because we've heard, there were 300 houses down here. When the mine closed, did a lot of people still stay here, or did they move on to different places to find work?
I couldn't say, Because when I moved in this house in 1955, and if you didn't die, you still here. I don't remember nobody moving, except the kids. They moved to different
Right.
places when they got out of school and college. But yeah,
So for the overall, the population's an older population that lives in this area?
they're gone, and then the younger ones. Some of the younger ones I don't know.
Right.
Mrs. Ford would know. She know more about it than I did. She was born here.
All right, our next special guest today is Mrs. Ford. Welcome and thank you for being part of our program celebrating 100 years of Coverdale. So we just wanted to ask some questions just to find out a little bit about you, how long you've been here, and then we'll go on to a couple stories that you may have for our viewers. So welcome.
Thank you.
And just let us know a little bit about you, how long you've been here.
I've been here for 77 years. And I lived in the fifth house down.
Okay.
That's where my grandmother stayed.
So you were born in this area.
I was born in the house, the fifth house down, my
Okay.
grandmother's house.
Okay. Now, were the mines still open when
Yes.
you? Okay. Well, I'm sure you were young because they closed in '48. But do you have any recollection or any stories about when the mines might have been open?
Well, the only thing that I remember when the mine being open is like when my grandfather and dad and everyone come home from the mine. And then if there was a accident in the mine, there would be you hear a whistle.
Okay.
And where the apartments are, that's where the company store was.
Okay. So when the mine closed in 1948, how did that affect this area?
The neighborhood didn't really change. Like I said, it was more family because there were Italian and different authentic groups there. And I don't know, just family, that's all we were. There wasn't all this bickering and hatred and all this stuff going on. And people, they took care of each other's children.
So everyone looked out for each other.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I know growing up that would leave the house, in the morning or whatever, and would come back at dinner time. Didn't even worry about where anyone was or what they were doing because it was just the culture of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So just give us a couple examples or stories of how it was growing up in this area.
So growing up in this area was really fun for the most part when we were kids. I had nothing but, like, this Cherry Street was full of my cousins, but then we had, like, neighbors that were like cousins that we didn't look alike, but we were family.
Right.
And still are. A lot of, the strong relationships that a lot of the kids have and that I have with people that lived here still remains. And they've moved out, and I stayed here. Like, I don't want to go anywhere else. But it was also very frightening times, too. We had a lot of racial tension that happened from riots through the high school, my cousin getting shot in the head right over in Miners. There was a lot of, like, walking down the street and people calling you the N-word and, like, that kind of stuff existed. And we experienced it. But the beauty in all of that is that you learn how to just it's not even ignoring it, but it's just recognizing that there are nasty people everywhere. Mm-hmm. And that there is always going to be an opportunity for somebody to just take the higher road. And that's what we were taught to do, and that's what we've done. And we just kept, persevering and doing what we needed to do. And me personally, I have changed it into something where I teach, diversity, inclusion, and equity, and I train and I try to help people become better. Just human beings, period. So my experience with the young people growing up and what I saw my grandparents have good relationships with our neighbors. And like my mother said earlier, families looked out for each other, and it didn't matter who you were. We were neighbors, we were family, we just took care of each other.
Yeah. I'm with Bob, and we're going to take a tour of some of the landmarks in the Coverdale area. And Bob, I'll turn this over to you to let us know what we're looking at, or what was here, or what used to be here.
Okay. Well, a lot of stories from the past from the older people have told me this house here on the corner. Oh, I'm sorry, on the corner of Cherry and Elm here. This was for prostitutes. This was the madam of the house built the addition on this to accommodate more ladies in the house.
Now, how about the homes that
Yeah.
we're going to be looking at here?
Adjoining Miners Field here, at the back of Miners Field, Miners Park here, right behind here is this house that was just recently torn down, I think within the last 5 years, and a house next door were speakeasies. And from what legend has, Miss B that lived on the corner, this other corner, would make the moonshine, and then would come over here, and then these were, places to drink. Okay, we're up here on the upper part of Cherry Street, and I wanted to point out two houses. Up to my left here, you'll see a house with a tall chimney on it. That was the childhood home of Armand Gilliam, and you might recognize that name. The Gilliam name is very well known in Coverdale, but Armand actually played in the NBA. And the house to the right of me, the greenhouse right here, legend has that used to be, back in the day, a pool hall. And a lot of the locals would come down here. So if you take notice to what was said before, at the bottom of Cherry Street was both speakeasies and the House of Ladies, and up here was the pool hall. You may notice that I'm standing on a mound here, and next to this mound is with a hoist house. I'm in the exact spot of where the tipple was. The tipple was where the coal was extracted and pulled out of the mine and put on the train cars. A lot of the elders in the past have told me that, contrary to a lot of the books you read, that the tipple was actually the man entrance also, and that's absolutely not true. The man entrance is where I showed you earlier, and here was only for extracting and raising and lowering the coal cars. As a child, I would sit on a lot of the miners' porches, and they would fondly recall all the great times they had in Coverdale. And I think it should be noted that those founders and those people that originally in Coverdale really built it what it was today. And I don't mean as far as structural, I mean as far as the idea of family, as a friendship, and as a togetherness.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our show on the 100th year anniversary of Coverdale. We learned a lot today, and I certainly learned a lot today. And we will see you next month for our next show of Jack of All Trades.
Mr. Canals had told me about the times when people started coming here to move up here to the mines. Mm-hmm. And he shared a few stories about how difficult it was, because it was basically immigrants from everywhere were coming here to find work, and how certain groups picked on other groups. And it wasn't just a black-white thing. It was just like, anytime you see a change coming and starting to happen, it's uncomfortable. So whoever was here before didn't like the fact that other people were coming
Sure.
in and coming into the mines. And I think there was a strike around that time, which was another issue too. Like, they were like scabs crossing the line, I guess.
Yeah.
So I always found that kind of stuff a little bit interesting, even though I'm not a history buff. I find the way that people relate to each other because they think they're going to lose something in the process.
Right.
What I found interesting is how it ended up morphing into a family. Mm-hmm. So, like, while there may have been resistance initially, and there were still some people that were just nasty throughout, like from back then all the way till the time that I know, till now, really. Yeah. There is a sense of love and respect with people in this area, and I value that immensely.